Question number 37. How are we to think about the untimely death of believers? So, we're making some bold statements in this series. And certainly, some people would say, well then, if that's true, Jared, if that's true about God's desire to heal, about the commission to heal, about how healing is found in the Great Commission, it's found in the atonement, it's found in the very nature of salvation itself. When we look at the word sozo, it's found in the very revelation of God's nature. He is Yahweh Rapha. If all of this is true, then what do we do with the untimely death of believers? What do we do with the untimely death of little infants and children who are born to believing parents? What do we do to those young moms and dads or teenagers who are in believing homes, who get sick and yet they don't get healed from their sickness? How are we to think about the untimely death of believers? It is true, premature death is one of the most difficult effects of life in a fallen world. The Bible speaks of kind of two categories of people: those who die full of days and those who die before their time. Listen to how Job said it in Job 42:17. Well, Job didn't write this. Whoever wrote Job did. It says, "And Job died, an old man, full of days." So there's one category of those who die in faith. They die full of days. But then Ecclesiastes 7:17, the preacher says, "Be not overly wicked, neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time?" Before your time. So he says, if you live wickedly and if you live foolishly, you might just end up dead before your time. So, two categories: those who die full of days, those who dies before their time. We don't need to assume that if one dies before their time, that it was God's perfect will or that he decided to take them home early. These are words of comfort that are often given, often shared, often believed when we are confronted with the untimely death of a loved one. That may bring us some comfort. But the question is it true? It's worth noting, I think, that every funeral that Jesus attended in the Gospels during his 3.5-year ministry was the funeral of a young person, not necessarily a child, but a young person. And they all ended with Jesus performing a resurrection. In each of these cases, he saw the untimely death of this believer as something that was contrary to God's will. He didn't celebrate it and say, well, God just decided to take him home early. Let's rejoice about that decision. No, he saw their untimely death as something that was contrary to the way things should be. And so Jesus, in only the way Jesus could, had seemingly 100% record. At least that's what the scriptures record, but it only records several of them. I'm sure he went to many more funerals, but we don't know about them. I say this to highlight that death is an enemy to be resisted, a product of sin and the fall, not a friend to be embraced. And yes, there is hope beyond the grave. I'm about to read some great verses about that, but that doesn't mean that we should see death as a friend or embrace it or just simply say, well, that was God's will. Christians are to rejoice with those who are spared from untimely death. We just heard a wonderful record here at our church at Faithway a couple weeks ago of one of our dear ladies who was spared from untimely death at a state park several years ago. And she never forgot it. And she gave that testimony with tears in her eyes. And the whole church just rejoiced with her. And we praised the Lord that God had spared her from an untimely death. We are to rejoice with those who are spared from untimely death. We are to grieve for those who die before their time. We are to trust God no matter the outcome, and thank God for his gift of eternal life beyond the grave. Paul taught his converts that Christians carry a unique perspective concerning the death of the righteous. He said that we are to grieve with hope. Grieve with hope. Listen to how he said it in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse number 13 through 18. He says, "But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep." That's just a figure of speech for those who have died, for our loved ones who have died. I don't want you to be uninformed about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others who do not have hope. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will always be with the Lord, be with our loved ones who have gone on, our loved ones who maybe have suffered with an untimely death. We will be with our loved ones, with Jesus. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. So how are we to think about the untimely death of believers? Rejoice with those who are spared untimely death. Grieve for those who die before their time. Trust God no matter the outcome. And remember, he's always good. And thank God for his eternal life beyond the grave.